Well, many thanks for staying with us. And of course, with all due respect, I hope you'll stay with us to the very end of this particular conversation in regards to the fuel crisis. We saw the Matatu protest or strike that started yesterday and ended today at midday. A strike that saw Kenyans walking to work. Some of them did not get there. Some of them had concerns about their job safety amid concerns over maybe getting fired. But today, this somewhat was some sort of a relief for many Kenyans or commuters who use public transport amid a nationwide paralysis. We're here to make sense of that particular strike. And of course, what is on the table in terms of solutions where President William Ruto is likely to look at as he finds a solution to these particular crises. Even as we talk about him finding a solution to this particular crisis, he is currently away in Kazakhstan. But before we begin this conversation, let me introduce my panelists. And again, with all due respect, to my immediate right is Mr. Kennedy Kaunda, the chairperson of the Tour Guide Association. A very good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
You doing well?
You're doing well.
Many thanks for making time.
Yes.
Also joining us this particular evening is Mr. Martin Chomba, the chairperson of the Petroleum Outlets Association of Kenya. Mr. Chomba, good evening.
Good evening to you, sir.
Many thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Now, next to Mr. Chomba is Dr. Peter Mbai, who is the Secretary, Economic and Planning Affairs with the DCP party. Dr. Ari, good evening.
Good evening. Thanks so much, and obvious.
Thank you very much for making time. Also, making time for us this particular evening, and last but not least, is Aksan Iraki, who is a professor at the University of Nairobi. Professor, good evening to you.
Good evening, my fellow countrymen.
Many thanks for making time. Now, gentlemen, before we begin this conversation, I want us to have a look at tomorrow's edition of Kenya's bold newspaper, that is The Standard. And on the front page, they say, "Walking nation as the president keeps flying." Walking nation as the president keeps flying. They say the president, of course, we know, before the start of the demonstrations, did fly away to Azerbaijan. And of course, later on today, he proceeded to Kazakhstan. They say the hourly cost of that particular flight is estimated to be around 3.2 million. That will also form basis of our conversation. But let us begin with Mr. Kennedy Kaunda. Sir.
Yes.
You have been a media sensation for the past 24 hours, from what some say is a very bold move to declare that indeed you guys had not reached an agreement with the cabinet secretaries for transport and energy,
yes,
to a very happy and smiling man this particular afternoon, right at the steps of Harambee House. One would wonder what changed between 9 p.m. yesterday to 1 p.m. today midday. What did the government offer that they did not offer yesterday?
Goodwill.
Goodwill.
Yes.
So you guys were not ready to take any goodwill yesterday?
You know, we came in with a goodwill, and we expected goodwill from them.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying yesterday there was no goodwill from the government?
Goodwill. That's why we did not agree, or I did not agree.
You were there as a group?
When
you say, "Oh, I did not agree,"
yes,
were you speaking as a sector in total?
Yes.
Or individually speaking?
We were speaking as a sector.
So the only thing that made you change your mind from the strike is on yesterday night and today that the strike has been suspended was the goodwill from the government?
It's the goodwill, yes.
Nothing tangible was offered?
No.
Interesting. Now, before I engage Mr. Chomba, many Kenyans have reacted to your decision to suspend the, Matatu strike today. And I'll just quote what one driver in Kitengela specifically said. He said, "The government did not consult anybody when revising these prices of fuel upwards. Why would they want to consult you now when you are seeking the revising of this particular cost of fuel downwards to begin with?" And just to quote him verbatim, he said, "Semeni kitu mmefanyiwa huko. Mimi sina furaha hata kidogo kama dereva." Some say you probably were promised, something by the government. So would you probably lay bare and answer this particular driver from Kitengela, to be specific?
With all due respect, I sit here as a driver, I sit here as a tour guide, I'll also sit here as the group CEO. I did state yesterday in the forum that we didn't have a goodwill from the government. That is why we had this meeting of today. And we were looking forward to the goodwill that we wanted. And for sure, we need a working nation, not a walking nation.
You see, what would say, before I engage Mr. Martin, that when you say you wanted goodwill, it's ambiguous. What exactly did you want? What exactly was not offered yesterday, Mr. Kaunda?
You see, we had our minimum demands that the fuel increase to be reduced up to 46, with 46. And that is what we were asking. The government stood to their grounds that they cannot go beyond anything far. But we had to take a break. We came down to the offer that they were giving us, which was 8. They went again further to 10. Mm-hmm. We were not able to agree. We went to consult and come back to give a statement to our Kenyan citizen and to the nation. The goodwill that we wanted. So during that discussion, we didn't have an agreement reached. So we decided to come together with the CS Churchill and Opio Wandai to speak on what we had agreed, that no agreement has been reached. We therefore suspend the conversation and push it maybe to Tuesday or Wednesday, okay, for further consultation. But in between, our CS Opio and I was reading something which they had prepared as a statement. That is where the goodwill did not come. If you watched the conversation, I stepped from behind, and I was not confronting him. I wanted to pass a message. And being courageous that I am, when I looked at the boardroom and no one was speaking, I think the spirit took everyone to be quiet. But I decided to approach him. And that is why I said, with all due respect, since we don't have any agreement. And that is why we had this meeting today, where the CS Murkomen. In fact, it is that statement which made them to extend the discussion, and today we were able to come up with a goodwill to the people of Kenya. Everything is paining. And what we read today in the press, it is the goodwill that we had, an understanding, not an agreement, an understanding that there is need. Yes, we are ailing because of the fuel cost, that we had to agree, let's have a suspension so that we can have a discussion to bring the cost of fuel down.
Okay, first things first. So are you saying yesterday, whatever the CS was reading, he was lying? Whatever he read was not what you agreed upon?
I cannot say he was lying, because whatever he was reading was what he had written himself.
Not what you had agreed upon?
Yes. That was his statement.
Okay.
So we wanted him to read our statement. And I'm happy today that he showed that goodwill, that he read the statement that was agreed with all of us.
Pretty much. Mr. Martin Shomba, let me come to you. Many said this particular strike by the Matatu operators would not last long, and they were proven wrong indeed, because it almost completed 2 days. But when you look at the engagement between the key industry players in terms of the transport sector and the government from yesterday to today, do you buy the idea that this strike was indeed suspended because of the goodwill that he says? And do you think there is a light at the end of the tunnel, or will we be back here again in 7 days?
Thank you very much, and good evening, Kenyans. When I look at what happened yesterday and today, my fault is basically not on what happened yesterday, but what ought to have happened.
Okay.
Whenever there's something like the strike that happened yesterday, the amount of money that the Kenyan economy loses, if you start to quantify it, it's beyond what we are trying to negotiate for. And so, for me, the beef I have is with the stakeholders at the government side, because it did not occur to us that the strike was happening yesterday. It is something that had been said earlier. And so the fact that we sat down and waited until the rubber hit the road, I think to me that was bad. And I've consistently said we have a problem that needs to be solved. And the petroleum issue that we are experiencing right now, it is important to not classify it as a one-term or two-term issue. This is not a political issue, because the petroleum affects everybody, whether you are in Mandera or you are in Vanga, whether you are in Moyale or you are in Kajiado, it doesn't matter who you are, it affects you. And so for me, we have a duty as a nation to look at this because it's a national security issue. So what ought to have happened, in my view, is that the day these prices were announced, and I believe that the government has its intelligence, they know the kind of economy that we are running. They know the amount of pressure our economy can take. And so for me, of the feeling that the government ought to have stepped in, and these negotiations needed to have been done earlier before this happened. For instance, let me tell you, today, from where I sit, I can do some calculations based on what is happening around the world. We are living in the information age. We have information on our fingertips. We know the price of the crude, the way it is being procured today. We can calculate the landing cost. So we can predict from where we sit what is likely to happen on June 14th. So what is likely to happen on June 14th should inform what we need to do from today heading to June 14th. Because I am not appreciating the idea that on 14th of every month, you who is a broadcaster, a tour operator, Chomba who is a retailer, professor, doctor, we all act surprised on June 14th, like we didn't know, we didn't see this coming. And for me, so we need to be proactive. We need to work with the people. We are living in unprecedented times. And sometimes even the wisdom that causes EPRA to keep quiet up until 14th may not apply at this particular time, because we are in a different time. I draw a parallel with the times of Corona. During that time, every day, somebody would come to the TV and tell Kenyans where we are. Today, we ought to have people who come to tell us every 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 days. They tell us that because we have vessels docking in Mombasa every week.
Okay.
So we need to be told that where we are right now, we are getting this product at this is what is likely to happen on June 14th. It will cure two things. One, it will help the nation work together towards whatever storm it is. Because in this country, and around the world, there can be catastrophic issues that can cause the prices of fuel even to go to 1,000 bob. If it happened, Kenya would not cease to exist. But the question is, do we know, are we aware as we move towards that? Are we proactive enough to carry everybody along? Number two, we cannot compare economies the way we compare them and say, US mafuta imepanda, Europe mafuta imepanda. For this one reason, very simple reason from where I sit. I'm not an economist, but I am a student of development studies. I know a few things here and there.
Okay.
When you compare, when somebody is paying a lot of money for fuel in US, and you compare that with Kenya, you're not comparing likes for likes. Reason being, today a common person who is working in the US is paid $19 an hour. That person works for a day, they are paid close to 20,000 shillings a day. If you're comparing that, I'll give an example, is a very simple example that Kenyans can relate to. A professor here has 10 chicken, Daktari has 5 chicken, I have 3, he has 1. And then we all agree that each of us must slaughter a chicken. He is slaughtering from nothing. He will not have any other. Once he slaughters is 1. When professor slaughters, he'll have 9. So professor can even say, why are you not slaughtering chicken? Me, I can even offer to slaughter 3. But
you'd have interchanged.
Yeah, okay. So what will happen is that when we compare Kenya economy and those other developed economies, that parallel cannot work. Our economy cannot take the pressure.
Mr. Shomba, but you can talk about comparison between Kenya and the United States. Let's come to our local level here.
Yes.
Let's compare Uganda, Kenya, for example, and Tanzania. Uganda. The president, after the review of fuel prices last month, talked about we should not compare Kenya and Tanzania because we do not belong to the same category, and he said Kenya is not a low-income country, and we shouldn't be compared to Tanzania. But when you go to the statistics by the World Bank, if you look at Tanzania and Kenya, we belong to the same category. That is the low middle income category. But the prices in Tanzania are cheaper compared to Kenya. And the president said the prices are different because there are of a lower level of income compared to Kenya. So
there are 2 things that contribute to prices being lower in Uganda here than in Kenya.
Okay.
One among them is that Uganda procure products the way we procure, but they procure through UNOC, National Oil Corporation of Uganda.
I want us to focus on Tanzania because Uganda is indeed of a lower cadre compared to Kenya and Tanzania. Uganda is low income, but Kenya is lower middle income on the same category with Tanzania.
You see, with Tanzania, the taxation regime of petroleum product, we are not at the same level. If you look at Uganda and Tanzania, the taxation regimes range between 30 to 40%. If you look at Kenya, we are doing 40 to 50%, and that is a huge disparity. But I needed to say something about Uganda, because this is also very important. When it comes to the retailing of petroleum product in Uganda, the government of Uganda does not cap the retail price. And the importance of that is that the companies that are selling fuel there, they compete with each other. And when they are out-competing each other, the benefits accrue to the common person.
We'll come back to the conversation of the tax regime, because there are several other African countries that have revised their tax regimes and done away with for example VAT, and to ensure that their citizens are cushioned. But we'll come back to that. Let me engage Dr. Peter Mbai. Dr. Do you buy to the idea of the government did offer some goodwill today so that the key players in the transport sector suspended their strike? Do you buy to that idea?
First, allow me to really pass my condolences to the families of the many young people who have been shot dead by police since yesterday. Across the country, quite a number. We are still compiling the figures, but they could be higher from what the official statistics are, because I can tell you, for example, Molo, we have 2 who were killed by police. 1 died in the fracas, not really shot, but he died in the fracas. At least 1 line over in Nakuru town, at least 2 in Naivasha. So the numbers are higher than what they are saying. We are compiling as a team, as a DCP party, and also the United Opposition. We'll give it to our principals so that we can give a statement later. But also the many young people who have been arrested, many of them innocent. I mean, many of them, because the police have this idea where they have to justify the action. They round up young people. Many of them are spending nights there. I don't know what the charges will be. I mean, an example is what happened yesterday at Nairobi Central. I mean, people are busy, so they had to say, we did some work. So they put 64 there, and the OCS decides they are not worth it. And there he was arrested. And please, this idea of NPS, statement I've seen here, please, come on. There was an official statement in the morning that he was arrested by the deputy regional commander, and he was taken in. So please, tafadhali, here's more comment. Let's stop that story of, unapiga kona, when people say the truth. So I want to give and commiserate with them. And then the people, many business people who lost property out of destruction and looting. We'll come to there about who is responsible for the looting and destruction.
We'll have that conversation.
Because we have a theory that some things are goons sent to create a picture, to profile a certain area. They're the ones that have all that. But let me answer your question.
Okay.
I'll say this. I want to congratulate the transport industry for taking the initiative to call for a strike. That is something which we normally say, this is not a politician's issue. It affects everyone. The fact that they took the initiative, we have to say thank you. Now, how far they took it, I mean, we were watching. But I want to put it on record. As the opposition, we were supporting them because we are also Kenyans and even our supporters are suffering. Now, the exit is what was not very clear. How it exited, people are suffering because they wanted to go and earn a living. Many people have been in Kenya, live hand to mouth. Not very many people have a payroll, have a pay slip, so that they can be at home and get a salary. So, but the exit, yesterday was very nice, but we saw a lot of smiles. So we were waiting another statement. This is what we agreed for the 2 hours we were inside there. At least this is how far we went, and this is where we disagreed. But Ian, since Kenya is run by, it's a presidential system, the big man has to be there, okay? You can't allow technocrats to go craft something and you just get a call from whichever country you are and approve. There are so many things intertwined, including private interest, such that the big man has to be there and see what is going to let go. Unfortunately, because in other democracies, you just allow the people to sit down, agree the technocrats, because they are there. We have a lot of confidence with the technocrats in the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum, but they are not allowed to think and make decisions. That's why, at some point, it had to go. The only thing, the confidence, people needed to be told, okay, we discussed up to here, we were not able to proceed because we need to wait for the president. But now, look at this here. Fine, here we are. Your question was very, very easy. What are the proposals we are putting on the table? For us, where we come from, we want to go to the point. We are asking the president. We are dealing with the president here because he's the CEO. He's the one who saw. And by the way, you need to have played that clip. We have played that clip over and over. When he was the deputy president in 2022, let me tell you, you cannot change goalposts. When you actually, when you get into the presidency, it's when you need to be very firm. He asked a very simple question. How comes fuel is passing through Kenya to Uganda? It's now he has been told, oh, go put the twist of low income and middle income. Those are stories, Mr. President. We are back to you. As you fly around, come with an answer. How comes fuel can be cheaper in other East African countries and not Kenya? So let me say this. We have a proposal, a very quick one, if you don't mind a year. One, briefly. The cost of petrol is 214, right? The cost of diesel is 242. Forget about those 10 shillings. Those are dramas. Those are dramas that don't make sense. In political economy, we don't do drama. We do actuals, right? So product cost is 117. Distribution cost is 4.9 or thereabout. Profit is 17.39. Taxes is 74, making it to 214 per liter. Okay?
Correct.
Now, we are saying the following. The cost remains at 117. Distribution remains at 4.9. Simply minus 4 shillings from the profit of the oil marketers. And that's why we have been saying there are people who pocket that money. They have to let go.
Who are these people?
Now,
because we talk about their people, their cartels, but who are these people?
I'll tell you this. The president told us the people. When he was the DP, he told us, there are cartels in the Ministry of Energy.
But you're doing the same. You're saying there are cartels, there are people.
No, that's what he told us. There are cartels in the Ministry of Energy. Now, if you want to understand the cartels here, look at this thing, animal called G2G. G2G is not a G2G. You give an example with Uganda. It's a national corporation that simply imports oil. Here, it's not. It's private companies. And by the median of them importing, a deal is made. Because I've allowed you, not all, 4 or 5, this is my cut. The cartels are senior people in government and most likely in the presidency, not even in the ministry. These are deals made at other areas. So we are saying, please remove the 4 shillings from the profit that is being made. In short, we want to deal with the laden cost. And finally, the taxes. If you remove the VAT from 8 to 0, that will save another 15 shillings from the fuel yarn, and then minus the fuel levy of 70 shillings, the amount of petrol will come to 189 shillings. And now, very quickly, if you do the same with diesel cost is 167, distribution is 4.7, very quickly profit 17, subsidy 14.5 already done, yes, okay. by the amount of money they're talking about, and taxes is 67. So the question is, diesel will come to 189. That is what we are telling Mr. President. Please. Okay. They took us off where they got us from. We appreciate.
We'll come to that.
It's only a week.
We'll come to that. Let me engage Prof. Mr. Eksan Iraki. Prof. The conversation about taxation, especially on matters fuel, is a very serious conversation that we need to have. And the president, while campaigning during the presidential debate, he was quizzed about what needs to be done so that we can solve this issue of high fuel prices. And they said we need to look at the taxation on fuel. But he came into office. First of all, the VAT was at 8%. It was doubled to 16% before it was reduced again by the same government last month to 8%. Now, there's several proposals on the table here. From an economic standpoint, Professor, is the proposal to totally scrap VAT on petroleum products viable?
That's an interesting question. And let me start by agreeing with my colleagues about how important the price of fuel is in this country. Because any time you raise the price of fuel, it has a ripple effect throughout the economy. As a matter of fact, before I came, I thought I would take maybe 45 minutes from wherever I was, but I found myself taking about 20 minutes. So I had the luxury of driving around the town. I went through Kenyatta Avenue, Moi Avenue, Kimathi Street, and then Kenyatta Avenue, and then I went through Koinange Street. And one thing I found about all those streets, they are very empty. And that shows the effect of this strike. Economic activities have been subdued. So back to your question. Now, I think one of the things we are not addressing today in this forum and elsewhere, and I can ask in this forum, the government, Kenya Kwanza government, is talking about 2 terms, and they are determined to go for a second term. So the question we should be asking is, why would a government that wants a second term next year be so careless not to think about the plight of Kenyans and let the price go up? It looks contradictory. So one reason why the prices are going up is the government needs that tax. And the government needs that tax for a very simple reason. This is public statistics. About 6 to 7% of all the tax that is collected in this country is used to settle debt. That's a fact. So if you reduce the tax from fuel, and by the way, about 15% of all the tax revenue in this country comes from fuel. That is very substantial and very predictable. So the reason why it is very hard to reduce the tax on fuel is because part of that tax is used to pay national debt. And the government wants to do all it can to stop defaulting. So if we can solve that paradox of how to get another money to pay that national debt, then we can reduce taxes. Number 2 is IMF. One reason why the government was very reluctant to add VAT to fuel or to oil is because they knew the political consequences of that. But because of the pressure from IMF, they instituted that VAT. So bring IMF, bring the debt, and then you see why it is very hard to reduce the tax on fuel. And I don't think it is a very enviable position to be in the government today when you have to deal with such hard decisions. But those guys campaigned very hard to be there, and we voted for them, so let them make the hard decisions.
Now, you've talked about, the government needs these, taxes, Professor. But at the end of the day, we see opulence, left, right, and center. Beat status spending millions or billions in hosting, events there, billions being spent on the office of, the deputy president. Tomorrow, on the front page of the Standard, they talk about luxury jet that the president hired, chartered flight from Kenya to Azerbaijan, from Azerbaijan to Kazakhstan, and then back to Kenya. And they say that particular flight or jet costs about 3.2 million per hour. So the question would be, we do pay these taxes so that we can be able to get money to pay debts for development. But at the end of the day, Kenyans pay taxes, but the way this money is spent is very questionable.
I think the former president one time stood on the podium and gave us the amount of money that is lost every day through corruption. And I think nobody disputed that. So one of the best ways to reduce taxes is to reduce waste and corruption. Because I don't think anybody has contested that there is no corruption in this country. And I'm sure if Kenyans saw where their tax was going, it is not being wasted, I'm sure more people will be willing to pay taxes, less people will be willing to go and demonstrate on the streets of Nairobi and other cities to demand fairness. So I agree with you that one way to reduce the taxes is to make sure there is less waste, so that if we save the waste, the corruption, nepotism, then we don't need all that taxes. But the question is whether there is political will to do that. Take a very simple example of one way to reduce the government expenditure, apart from reducing waste and nepotism, is to reduce the number of employees in county government and national government. But do you really want to reduce the number of employees in national and county government when there is voting next year? Again, another fix for the government. So what we need are politicians who have a political will, who can make decisions that will even cost them positions next year. But they make sure that we have solved the national economic problem once and for all. Who that is another question.
I'll ask you one final question before I come back to Mr. Kaunda. Are we witnessing or seeing a situation where the government of the day, led by the president, preaches water and, drinks wine? Because even in his fast, national prayer breakfast, I believe, after the visit to the United States, when he was questioned about the cost of the private jet that he had hired, and he said it was paid off by a friend of his, he said, Kenya will not witness any wastage of funds, be it in whatever form. But that has not changed. When you say there is lack of political goodwill, who does the buck stop with in ensuring that that goodwill is there? Is it on Kenyans on the ballot during voting day? And are Kenyans the biggest letdown in ensuring that we have accountable and leaders of goodwill in place?
One that came out very clearly in 2024 protests, came out very clearly, is that the trust between the government and the citizens of Kenya has been eroded. So we don't trust each other. And if we don't trust each other, you can see the consequences. So that is why if the government comes up with the policies and regulations, we are suspicious, no matter how well-intentioned it is. So one way to make things or to put things in order is to make sure that we build that trust between the citizens of this country and the government. And one way to do that is get the tax money, put it to the right use. So that as a citizen of this country, I don't need to worry about security. I don't need to worry about water. I don't need to worry about power. I don't need to worry about the school fees for my children and so on. So if the tax was put into that use, I'm sure people will have no problem with the government. They will trust it. The government will trust us, and this country will move forward. But very important, let's also not forget that the reason why we're having all these problems is that the economy has not grown fast enough. If the economy was growing fast enough, we would have more taxes from corporate tax, from income tax, from VAT, and from all the levies. And the government would have enough money to pay for the services and to pay for the development. And all of us would be happy.
Fair enough. Let me come back to Mr. Kaunda. And even before I ask you my question, someone has texted me here and he says, you're lying when you talk about goodwill. And he says, yesterday you were very furious, but today he says in Kiswahili, ulikuwa na furaha sana, ulikuwa unacheka sana. Anauliza kama, nasema muulize kama walilipwa. So were you paid? That is a concern by one of Kenyans watching us.
I was not paid. Mm-hmm. Yes. I was not paid.
Okay.
And I still stand with due respect.
Fair enough. There's one other question here, and it is in regards to the issue that I talked about. It says, when you talk about goodwill, did the government say or promise that it will consider your proposal to reduce the price of fuel per liter to probably 30 shillings? Because you said yesterday you were open to ikienda sana 30 shillings. Did they promise to consider that?
Let me say that we are living in very unfortunate times. Mm-hmm. We are managing a crisis in a crisis where we want a working nation, not a working nation. We wanted something to take home.
So what did you take home?
Transport sector is a very fragile industry.
Okay.
And it is the first time in Kenya where diesel has become so expensive than the petrol.
Than petrol, true.
And it is the diesel which drives the economy of Kenya. Either agriculture, either transport, all the way. So, let me come to your point. And I like what Professor said. we had something that we wanted to take home because it is paining. We are looking for a solution. But what we got today, it is a promise. And we are dwelling with that promise. I felt relieved because of what happened today. And that is why I stand by the question that if I did not take courage and approach the CS with yesterday's scenario, we could have not been here today. And we are sitting here today, all of us, to discuss where we need, Kenya need professional and expert.
Okay.
So that we are able to fix this country.
Okay.
Therefore, I want to say that we are looking forward, since I'm a believer, with the 7-day ultimate question, that by Tuesday next week, what we did is to suspend the strike, not to call off the strike.
Okay, let me just cut you short.
Yes.
Because you're saying you wanted something to take home.
Yes.
And you're saying today you went home with a promise from the government.
Yes.
So yesterday when you had that particular deliberations with the government officials for, be it five hours or so, all you wanted was a promise. Because when you talk about a promise, just a moment, when you talk about a promise,
yes.
Yesterday the CS for Treasury was interviewed and they said, the government will look into it. And they said, when the president comes back to the country, jets back into the country, he'll probably convene a cabinet meeting and they will deliberate on the possible solutions. That is a promise. Why didn't you take that if all you took home today was a promise?
It is a promise that we have suspended the strike. We have all agreed that there is a crisis, or in a crisis where the president is not in the country. We are having all of us where we cannot make decision on ourselves, that we need to consult. So therefore, we need to consult. And consulting, we have been given a timeline. Yesterday, we wanted something to take home. The reduction of 46, that is what we want. And I still stand by that. From the transport sector, that is what we want.
36.
46.
46.
That is what we wanted, 46 reduction. And that is what
on diesel? Or
46 on fuel.
All?
Yes, because in fact, petrol, all kerosene should be at bar with each other.
Okay.
And then, sorry?
Just continue. I'll ask my question once you finish. Oh, I can ask now. So, can you tell Kenyans today that by the end of these 7 days, if these 46 shillings that you're asking for will not be offered, will Kenyans be walking to work again after 7 days?
What Kenyan wants, and I, from where I sit, we want the fuel increase to be brought down by 46 shillings.
That is why I'm asking, is this 46 the irreducible minimum?
That is the reducible minimum. The government has not put on the table because they are giving room for consultation.
But they offered 10.
They offered 10?
Yes.
They offered 10.
That is the reduction that
that is the promise. It is not, I have not seen, I'm yet to receive the agreement.
EPRA did issue a directive. But just to make this whole conversation short,
yes.
Just a yes or no. If the 46% that you're asking for will not be granted to you in terms of the reduction, in terms of the price of petrol or diesel per litre, will Kenyans be walking to work again next week on Wednesday? If that 46 is not given.
We are all in agreement that 46, if we are not going to reach an agreement where, like yesterday, we had gone down to 30 or 35. That is where we are looking. Of course, we are also Kenyans. We need to agree.
Okay.
At least to a certain level. So on Tuesday, if the government does not put any reduction, which is acceptable to us, we are going to call to resume the strike again.
What can't you take? What will not be acceptable?
It is 10%, the 10 shillings that we are not taking that. But meanwhile, because we accepted it for us to have a conversation.
Okay, let me come to Mr. Chomba. Why is it that we don't have a refinery here in the country for almost 12 years now? Yet we have billionaire businessmen who are dealing with fuel, petroleum products, even here in the continent, who can set up these refineries. There was talk some time back about a businessman who wanted to put up a refinery here in the country, but because of the the environmental economic situation, and there were talks about people asking for bribes for that to happen on the part of the government, that led to that not that particular initiative not materializing. So what is the biggest stumbling block?
Thank you. Thank you. Allow me to just say one thing about what you just spoke and then get to that. Okay. I want to say that the government has a golden chance right now to demonstrate goodwill to Kenyans because of the ultimatum that have been given, the 7 days that have been given. In proper governance, it doesn't matter what the consultation will be like, but what Kenyans would wish to see is the same government coming back and telling Kenyans, look, we are here. Because today, elsewhere, I was lauding the fact that people can sit with government and have these kind of conversations. So after 7 days, it doesn't matter what the agreement be, but let us stick to that so that we can create that goodwill with the Kenyan people, that at least we can come back and say whether it is good or bad, but there's something, the government sticks to it one. Okay. Having said that, the issue of refinery in Kenya, the reason why we don't have a refinery in Kenya, or rather why we have the refinery that we had, the Kenya Petroleum Refinery, KPRL in Mombasa, Changamwe, is defunct, is because it was not designed for efficiency that we are experiencing today. There are a lot of products that come from crude oil, and the Kenya refinery was not able to to give it the efficiency that it requires. However, building a refinery is not an issue that people need to discuss whether it's good or not. I have of the opinion that where we are as an economy, calling ourselves medium developing a nation, okay, we cannot sit and enjoy petroleum at benevolence of peace at the Strait of Hormuz. I don't think that is good. In class, I'm told that in management that hope is not a strategy. We cannot sit and hope that there will always be peace in the Middle East. It is incumbent upon the forward-thinking technocrats within the ministries of petroleum to make sure that we don't just have a refinery, but we also have strategic oil reserves. In Mombasa, and the Petroleum Act of 2019 requires the government of Kenya operationalize petroleum oil, strategic oil reserves that would last Kenya at the very least 90 days. This is what would be happening today if we had that. If you remember 3 months ago, petrol stations were running discounts. You'd go to places and see 5 shillings discount, 3 shillings discount, whatever discount. Okay. That is the time that we would have stocked our strategic reserves. 90 days, we would have been able to just Kuinamatu and all this disaster goes, and then we are able to buy and restock. But this is an indictment to the people that have been given the responsibility to lead us. The other thing that we have done, which is not okay, and I'll keep on saying this for as long as there's anybody who is willing to listen. Okay. The systematic killing of National Oil Corporation does not do service to this country. I know people argue that it was not profitable, but I tell people, today we keep National Police. National Police does not give us profit in terms of money, but they give us profit in terms of security. For the same reason that we have Kenya Airways operating, we must have National Oil Corporation operating. Because if you look at where we get our product, all these companies that give us product, they are all beholden to the nations that they come from. Saudi Aramco is a national oil corporation in Saudi Arabia. ADNOC in Abu Dhabi. Enoch in Dubai. They are all owned by government. They are behemoth institutions owned by government. Why? If today we had National Oil Corporation running, and there is a law that required that all the oil, all the oil imported in Kenya, 30% ought to come through National Oil Corporation, then National Oil would be now saying that because we are government, we are foregoing every other profit that we have and give it to the common person. And that would bring a reprieve. Then, instead of telling people how much to sell at the pump, the government would energize National Oil Corporation to import cheap petroleum, bring in the petroleum, and then force other people through market forces to reduce the prices of products. So, oil refinery is something that we must do. The idea of doing it in Tanga, to me, is something that is unpalatable. Because if you look at the world, you will see that the world is moving away from multilateralism. And I agree with the optics and the stories about East African cooperation, but I think I'm a classical airist. The truth of the matter, when chips come down, we are in a nationalism kind of an era, where a president, the idiosyncrasy of a president, can make a decision that will cost other people. Today, we have President Trump coming into office and lettering USAID and those other organizations defunct. And anybody and any program that was dependent on this will not work. So if today we build our refinery in Tanga, the day we'll have an issue like the breakdown of 1977 of East African community, and it breaks down and we have some sort of enmity with our neighbors, what will happen to us? Why don't we develop our industry, build our refinery in Mombasa, build strategic oil reserves, and then revive National Oil Corporation? We'll have sorted 50% of all the issues that we have within the petroleum industry.
Okay, fair enough. Dr. Pichambai, the big concern by Kenyans out there is that we are playing politics with this issue of fuel. And there have been proposals like I alluded to earlier on. There's, of course, the proposal on scrapping VAT on fuel. There's a proposal to cut, oil margins by around 4 shillings. There's, the proposal to add another 5 billion from the Petroleum Development Levy, which, by the way, the CSO Treasury says we're only remaining with 5 billion. There's also the proposal to, reduce the road maintenance levy from 25 to 18%. Now, if you look at the biggest duties that we have on fuel here in the country, the biggest one is the road maintenance levy, which is 25 shillings per litre. And then we have the VAT, which was reduced from 16 to 8%. And then we have the excess duty, the PDL, Petroleum Development Levy, and then we have the Railway Development Levy. The government opted to reduce the VAT on fuel from 16 to 8, which, by the way, was increased by the same administration. Would you think it would be a good? Do you think will it be a good idea to again probably look at the road maintenance levy, which is the biggest duty on fuel, and probably take it back to 18 shillings?
That's exactly what we are saying. And I want to say this. Choba, I like the way you are preaching to people who don't care. Actually, what you are saying cannot work with this government because it is the 4th year. If they had any intention, all these proposals were read on them the first year. But because of the private interest, because of greed, here we're not dealing with the land war and all that. Let Kenyans be very clear, by the way. Yeah, and let's tell our people from a general perspective, the problem in Kenya with fuel has very little to do with the war in the land. It has 80-90% to do with the personal greed or people who are taking advantage of the war to come and literally oppress their people. If we understand that, we'll start from a very good footing. And the beauty about political economy, it teaches you to be realistic to whatever is happening, but also think politically, because, like you said, people don't want stories here. Kenyans are very bitter, very angry, by the way. Not just transporters, everybody, because this has an impact on everyone. So we want the 7 days, we said, fine, fair enough. And I can tell you this. Yeah. When we come to the table, when the United Alternative Government comes to the table, we will not go to Harambee House. We will not go to State House. We'll just tell them what we are saying. We'll tell them, please, can you reduce? And we'll go to the streets until it is reduced. Okay? We want to see what happens to them. We'll decide. By the time our principals converge this weekend, we'll decide where they get tired, where they get weak. Brothers can get weak. We'll take up from there and say, can we proceed until? Because the moment we have 4 years to do all the policy issues Shoba you're talking about, but it's not possible. So let me tell you what is going to happen. We are saying we have given them a formula. Every time we asked, how can you propose something that is workable? We have proposed here, and we have been talking about this since last month, okay?
Okay.
We have engaged our accountants, our economists to come and tell us what can happen. You have asked a question, let me answer you. Ian, we are telling this government, please, we have given you where to get the money. You have asked a question. It's only 5 billion. The amount of wastage in this government, you can get up to 20 billion. The budget is 4 trillion. Another 4 trillion money, which is in debt. Surely you cannot miss some money to simply subsidize this amount of fuel.
Okay, let me ask you.
Yes, please.
Dr. Ari, the opposition, and you included, even your party leader, Rigathi Gachagua, you paint a very beautiful picture of economic policies that you'd want to implement once you probably take over the highest office in the land come 2027. But one would argue, and specifically single out you and the deputy president, you're once part of this administration. Did you try and table these economic policies and ideas that you have? And if at all you did, how far did it go? Were your policies advice taken or not?
And that's why we're out. Can I tell you out? if they were working, we would be there. That's why we're out. Because we came to this government with the hope that it's the people first. Just to discover it's about some few leaders first. We couldn't cope. All these things, I can tell you, I can open my phone and tell you all the specific, and not from anybody else, from the technocrats in the ministries. My municipals, energy, everything. We sat down with, asked them what can be done. The issue of G2G came, and we said G2G should be G2G. Should be what we are talking about, national oil. But it had to be killed so that the private sector could come, people who can give a kickback. That's what we are talking about. We thought it's about the people, but it came to be about, private interest in public programs. So to answer your question, that's why we are saying, Kenyans will not wait until next year. This cannot wait. We had hope, people will behave and then we wait until next year. We are saying within a week, please, we have to see these things going down. And on addition to that,
Yes, within a week, you're saying within a week?
No. It's them who said. It's them who said give us 7 days. Of course, I'm sure to wait for the president to come back.
Last time out, your party leader did, give a 7-day ultimatum, but nothing happened after 7 days.
Nothing happened. Let me tell you one thing, and that's why we are here. Because they saw nothing happened. That's why they could simply put prices so high, thinking again nothing happened.
So what will you do? What will you do different?
Rest in peace, Jacob Juma. 2016, 10 years later, there are prophets who are created by God put on this earth. He said that if William Ruto is elected in 2022, in 26 he will raise up for the fuel. 2026 specifically. Then he reduced. That's what he did in April. Then he released the fuel again, and Kenyans will be so tired and they will suffer. I can tell you this. We are here in this generation. We are telling the president, you said 7 days. We didn't ask you. You said 7 days. And on addition to that, the issue of adulterated fuel. I have a case today of one of our supporters, Dr. Daniel Kanchori. He fueled in one of the stations in Kajiado. I will not mention it. Right now, his engine has knocked because of the issue of sulfur. This is real. So the government is watching as our vehicles are breaking down. This is kind of things we are saying. We are not going to allow. Let me mention to you something. In 2023, Ian, let me tell you about the profit by marketers. Why we are suffering. If we were suffering because of something genuine, it would be something. Listen, petrol for the marketers were taking 9 shillings 80 cents in 2023 for petrol. Right now it's 17 shillings. 2026. Diesel, it was 2 shillings. The profit they were making per liter. Right now it's 17 shillings. Kerosene, it was 4 shillings. Right now it's 17 shillings. In 2 years, oil marketers, because they have picked a few of them, they have private interest, that's where your money, Kenyans, is going. If we can simply stop the greed, then freeze all this other money, put the money in the fuel. This for the petrol, Ian, 187 shillings from 214, that is 27, and diesel from 242 to 189, at least 53, not very far from what they are doing. Okay. That's the level of fuel prices we want them to go.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Let me engage Prof. The various options on the table, but from an economic standpoint, what would you advise the government to do? Because, like I alluded to when I was, addressing Mr. Chomba earlier on, there are several countries in, Africa that have taken measures to cushion the citizens. For example, in South Africa, they did, cut the fuel levy and also, the they did cut the fuel levy on diesel and petrol. In Zambia, they scrapped the VAT on fuel, as well as temporarily suspend excess duty. In Namibia, they reduced taxes on fuel by half. In Comoros, they suspended fuel levies, which had been introduced last week. So, of all the options that the president has, which one is the most viable? Which one would you, as an economist, advise the head of state to take? Which route should he take in this particular crisis that we are in at the moment?
I have a few that I can recommend, but before I give the recommendations, it's very unfortunate that we cannot or we fail to predict Kenya's behavior. So we knew that because of this rise in prices of fuel, Kenyans would demonstrate on the streets of Nairobi and other cities because they have done that in the past. So I'm surprised that it will take for the price of fuel to go down. So that's very unfortunate. But now let me give you my recommendations, because I have a number. One of them is we need subsidies. Have we not been subsidizing fertilizer? So if we have been subsidizing fertilizer, why can't we subsidize fuel prices in the short run? That's one option. The other option is what everybody has been saying, we reduce the taxes. For example, and I want to hear from one of you, what do we do with anti-adulteration levy? What exactly does it do? Why don't we remove it? And there is a very good reason why we need to remove the road maintenance levy. We have an infrastructure fund. So if you have an infrastructure fund, let's remove that levy from the so-called fuel prices. And very important, if we cut the taxes and reduce the levies, that will be an economic stimulation. So we expect the economy to be more vibrant and probably the government to get more taxes. That's the reason why we are saying cut those taxes, remove them from fuel. But very important, before I finish, we need to start thinking of innovations. Why is nobody talking about shifting to electric cars? That's what everybody is doing in China and so on. And why are we not talking about our oil, the oil that we have in northern Kenya? And finally, in the short run, we need to go back to open tender system, not G2G. Because through the open tender system, we were able to let the market do its work, and all these levies and all these high costs that Dr. Mbai is talking about would be reduced by open tender system because there will be more competition. That's what I would do in the short run.
When you talk about a short run or temporarily, how long are we looking at? And again, even as you respond to that.
That's something we can do in the next 3 months. Because subsidies, you can do it immediately. Taxes, you can do that immediately. If you think about oil, that will be the wrong run.
The short term goes to 4 to 6 months.
4 to 6 months.
In innovations, you can give us subsidies so that we start buying electric cars. And something like OTS, we can revert it to that immediately.
There's also the concern about whether we can sustain, for example, we've sort of used the petroleum development levy, and the CS says we're only remaining with 5 billion. Of course, 6.2 billion was dished out during the last cycle of prices review. Then another 5 billion was issued last week. So it says we're only remaining with 5 billion. So how far can we go? Can we be able to sustain that particular program, for example?
No, we can't, but we can get money from elsewhere. If we reduce waste that we have been talking about, that money can be used for subsidies. Mm-hmm. And I've also argued that if you subsidize the price of petrol, there will be more economic activities. And that is going to generate more taxes through VAT and other taxes.
What happened? By the time Uhuru Kenyatta was leaving office, he had subsidized up to 50 shillings and more. A lot of money was picked from somewhere else because you have to determine what matters for your economy. Okay. I mean, fuel is basic.
Okay, let me just ask Professor one more question, Prof. From where you sit, is the president daring or careless? Because we're looking at the Finance Bill 2026. We're also looking at, the opposition did say they will be steering the June 24, the demonstrations in terms of commemorating the June 2024 demonstrations. So does it mean from where you sit, the president has to be pushed to act?
That's become the nature of Kenyan politics, that for the government to act, they have to be pushed. I think there's another issue that has come out from this debate, or this big debate about petrol prices. One is the high cost of living. But another very important thing, and this is what the mistake we are making, that the Kenyans are not demonstrating just about the price of fuel, the price of petrol and the price of diesel. There's a more fundamental issue, which is the high cost of living. But it also brought something else very important to answer your question, the price of over-centralization. That's why when the president is not here, decisions cannot be made. And I think if the economy has to grow, people have to get freedom to make decisions and even mistakes. And I think I'm very concerned from an economic point of view about this over-centralization, that decision cannot be made because somebody is not there. I'm not saying the president should lose power, but when it comes to economics, freedom to decide or to make decisions is very important.
It has reminded me of something, because the CS for Treasury said when the president comes back, we'll discuss further measures. The second thing, even in this particular crisis, and that has been highlighted on the front page of the Standard tomorrow, we've not seen the deputy president, taking center stage or driving this particular conversation. And they say the president has entrusted the governor of Nairobi to steer these conversations in regards to the negotiations on the fuel crisis. And Mr. Kaunda is nodding. What does that say about the government of the day?
It just tells you who is trusted, who is not trusted, who is the point man, who is not the point man. But I think my biggest concern today is that we are giving political solutions to economic problems, and those will be long solutions. So let's give economic problems economic solutions. If we give them political solutions, we are going to be talking here next week and the week after, even after Kaunda and his men have negotiated, with all due respect.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Kaunda, let me come back to you. As an association, how did this particular strike affect you and the people you represent?
Number one, if I pick up from what Professor said, I'm happy today that I'm seated with professionals. Kenyan people, we have no problem with paying taxes.
Okay.
From where I sit, if I pay taxes and I come out there and I will commute, I'll go to work by taking that Matatu. Will I go to the market? I'll get what I want. That I can afford that. The issue here, people are politicizing transport sector. Number two, there are so many taxes. What we are seeing, it is the money. Where is this money going? We are giving so much taxes, and where is the money going? And that is what is eating back to us, that life has become unbearable. With the professionals that I'm seated in today here, and you did ask that, the unfortunate things, the government comes, it takes us by surprise by hiking the oil fuel. Now we ask that because we are not on the table when they were making this decision. I will urge my brothers here, Dr. Mbai, my brother Martin, and Professor Chamba. Where are we in terms of those things? We are policy issues. Because I come in as an investor. I buy, I invest in transport sector. I need to run. Because that is the major economic block which brings a lot of revenue to the government.
Now, let me ask, with all this, hike in price, the cost of fuel here in the country, have you probably, are we staring at job losses in terms of the people you also represent, because the cost of doing business is also going high?
We are. I tell you, for the last 2 days, it has become unbearable. The moment you hike fuel, and as I said before, that diesel is one of the driving economic force, because that is what drives the economy. Because from the lorries, from the tractors which wanna farm kwa shamba, from the lorries which pigs farm ni chakula,
okay,
to the lodges, to the camp, to the market, so that we can assess them where they are. They use fuel.
Okay.
Sending parcels, driving even this diesel to their destination. So this is it. The moment we hike and we cannot afford, all these things become so expensive for us to bear. And it eats down there, because even to the people who are in the garage, The spare parts also it is hiked.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So we are not able to afford. Therefore, even those people who are down there, the mamambogas, they cannot even go to the market and buy what is recommended for us. And those people who are working, even those who are pushing push cutters, you are mkogoteni. Yeah? The moment this happens, all of us, we feel it.
Okay.
Because job will get for. Now, as we speak today, for the last 2 days, even the mechanic people will tell you, they have been sleeping angry. No vehicles to repair. No one is driving their vehicles there.
I was in Roysambu yesterday, and of course I saw the mechanics didn't have much to do, meaning they don't get to take anything home at the end of the day. But it's good you've alluded to that. Let me come to you, Mr. Chomba. What risks are African countries, staring at in terms of if they fail to devise better approaches to handle or to mitigate these global oil issues that we're witnessing? If at all, for example, the issue of the Strait of Hormuz is not resolved anytime soon, and probably what are the possible approaches that we can devise, even as a country, to escape all this mess that we're in at the moment?
It's about time that African states embraced their own issues and dealt with them without looking to perpetuate this narrative that was either by default, I think it's default, left by design, left by the colonialists. Today, Ian, it is appalling that we enjoy chocolate at behest of Switzerland and Belgium. That in as much as we grow cocoa, if they decided that we are not eating chocolates, we will not eat them. Reason being, we have refused to develop our own industry. Tea and everything else, the best tea in the world is English tea. They don't grow even one bush of tea in UK. But the thing is, as Africans, who has stopped us from developing our own industry? We have to come up with policy ideologies that are African-centered, in that today, as I was speaking about petroleum, it is appalling that the oil deposits within Africa are much more than people envisaged or thought about. But we are very slow in developing them because we have this dependency syndrome. And as you know, our economy today, we import everything, including toothpicks. Yet, we are running an economy and we are priding ourselves as a developing economy. We are not. If anything, we are a stagnated economy, and a stagnation is a process that precedes death. So, in my view, what we must do as Africans, when it comes to things like mining and oil, we must develop these industries here. If we don't do that, we are setting ourselves for failure, and we shall forever be crying foul. And that's why the leaders that are coming, I know we live in a political economy where you cannot disentangle politics and economy. Actually, my professor tells me politics is the master science. And today, for me, if we are going that route, I am calling upon Kenyans to be dissuaded from, allow me to say this, from a narrative that has been perpetuated in this country because of what Sir Charles Jonjo said some times back, that politics is a dirty game. Okay. And it has perpetuated a narrative whereby anybody who has done serious things in this country, brains like Professor, who can help us, brains like Dr. Mbai, and other people who are industrialists, if you go and tell them to participate in politics, they tell you no. It's a dirty game. So the net effect is that we all leave it to dirty players. And then after elections, 2 months after elections, we all act surprised that those people do not have the capacity to think at the latitude we think they should be thinking.
Okay.
It is because we have dissuaded our children, the one we take to school, the people that are doing beautiful things out there, not to participate in politics, thinking that they are safe. It is important for you, Kenyan, to understand. Doesn't matter whether you are a neurosurgeon, an aeronautical engineer, astronomer, a banker, whatever it is you do, the laws that we make in this country are made by politicians. You operate in an environment which is designed by politicians. And the problem with this narrative is that at the end of the day, we have created a system, Dr. Mbai, today. I don't understand why, Professor, is it that for you to practice law in this country, you have to go to the Kenya School of Law? For you to be a judge, you need a degree and even Kenya School of Law.
Okay.
But for you to interpret, that is to interpret the law. But for you to make the law, we have made our laws that for you to make a law to be in parliament, you don't have to be schooled. Absolutely. You tell me what kind of a lopsided kind of administration arrangement that we have or running of a country. It is no wonder that the people making decisions that are very critical to the country are not alive to the kind of thinking that we have at a certain level. And this precipitates the frustrations that you see with the technocrats in the industry, because the kind of the laws or other directives that are given are not consistent with the policies that are needed to take the countries to the next level. And it is duplicated across Africa. Everywhere we have technocrats who cannot give direction, and they are given by politicians who do not care for those policies.
Pretty much. Let me come to Dr. Mbai. This particular issue of fuel and also matters regarding taxes, the high taxation regime that we have here in the country. Some say, and it is a fact, that it does indeed hurt the competitiveness and productivity of our manufacturing sector. From an economic standpoint, how do we ensure that we protect our manufacturing sector? And even as you respond to that, as the united opposition, because of course you're the Secretary for Economic and Planning Affairs under the DCP party, what mechanisms, what plans, what policies do you have to ensure that that indeed is enhanced?
This what we are going to do, and what we are planning, and what we have it already, because it's been there. This country, this government refused to be a production economy. It became a consumption economy. That is the biggest problem we have right now. The proposals we had of having industries in every county, so that we begin producing instead of consuming, so that even if you take a loan, it goes directly to production. Then we are able even to begin exporting. That's how you improve even the foreign exchange. The problem is, being a consumption, you become slaves of all the people who produce, and then you are the ones who are consuming and importing, and then you lose the foreign exchange. So what the plan on the table is this: kindly, please, light from chocolate, light from palm oil, cotton. We already, this country is mapped, Ian, where you can grow palm to produce palm oil and do oil, actually, cotton, everything else, including a leather shoe. I remember we were somewhere with the president, and he said next year, that was 2022-23, he said next year in August, I'll wear a shoe from a goat, a hide from Laikipia.
Said we'll slaughter 3 million.
Yeah, slaughter 3 million and all that. Now, simply do it. That's what this government has not been able to do. And that's why delivery died long time ago. Nothing. We are on autopilot. Actually, what we are doing here, what the government is doing here, is political survival. But we normally say, politicians think about the next election. Statesmen think about the next generation. You should be able to do something like Mahatma Gandhi. Do something. Even today we remember him, that he started the textile industry in India. So what is on the table? Actually, it's here on this phone. Or what we need to do on each sector, like for manufacturing, energy and petroleum, or what he is saying, simply remove greed and all be well. But let me say to this quickly. Now, we are hoping tomorrow. Yeah, there's one hope Kenyans have, because we are here on behalf of Kenyans. Okay. There will be no fare increase. The transport industry people, they have not told us what they discussed in the room. But one thing Kenyans are hoping, that they agreed to bear that cost for 1 week. That increase for 1 week. We don't want confusion tomorrow. That is the request we have, and I'm sure some of the members are here. Number 2, let government decide between two things. They were going to fetch 6.3 billion from the VAT cycle from kerosene and diesel and petrol a year. Okay. So that's 6.3. But in a day, the cost to the economy, one day, like yesterday and today, is 6.4 billion. So as they plan for the 7 days, let them decide whether they want to go look for the money from elsewhere, bring the petrol down to 187 and diesel to 189, or do a whole week or 2 weeks until We don't want to go to fall victim to the prophets of Jacob Juma, that we are going to get tired. We must do this thing. If we don't do, we are going to suffer continuously. Finally, our team is working on the finance bill. We are checking the budget. People just focus on the finance bill. On the budget, Ian, to come and tell the president by Tuesday, this is where, remove this money from the State House, from here, from all this wastage, put it in the, we are going to advise it.
Okay.
We are going to put the tables on the figures on the table.
Fair enough. We're running out of time, but I want you to respond to this in just 30 seconds or a minute. You said the delivery in this Kenya Kwanza administration is dead. Nothing has been delivered. That is correct?
Yes.
You served as the head of the government delivery unit. Yes. What did you achieve in the period that you had, you did lead that particular docket before you resigned? Because you resigned, I believe, in 2024.
Yes.
What did you achieve?
Thank you. What we did
30 seconds.
30 seconds was very foundational. What the planning part, to be given the go-ahead to work, we went to every ministry. This is very important here. We sat down with the CSs, the PS, and the senior management in every ministry. So we'd come and ask them, excuse me, guys, forget about all these grand things. Don't tell us you are doing 20 things. Just tell us 3 things you can do in your ministry that can uplift this economy.
Okay.
Okay? For example, let me give an example with the Minister of Investments, Trade and Industry. Okay? 1, what can we do to make sure this country begins a working machine of production? County aggregation industrial parks, right? In every county. By the time we left there, we had done 17. Up to then, none other has been done. We were supposed to have people compete on issues of what am I producing? What is Kware producing that Makueni is not producing? Nakuru, Murang'a, all the others doing cotton, all the others doing everything else. We are able to present those proposals to the president.
Okay.
And the chief of staff and the head of public service, and told them all what we need corrupts all these other delivery. Every unit, there are like 6 delivery units in this country. Office of the president has one, the advisors have another, there are 6. We collapse them. Let's agree what needs to be delivered. Let people put them in a system.
Okay.
Every Kenyan can know. No, you ask me a question. My dad second, put them in a system so Kenyans can know what is it being delivered in the Ministry of Energy, in the Ministry of Agriculture.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So please, it's very long time ago. Let's in peace delivery. We are in political season, unfortunately.
Okay, fair enough.
We are going to do something fresh.
We're running out of time. Prof, even as we wind up this particular conversation, there are 2 things. One, the inflation rate did rise year on year from 4.4 in March to 5.6 in April. With this particular crisis, are we staring even at another higher surge in terms of the inflation rate? And number 2, they've alluded to, that is Mr. Chomba and Dr. Rimba have alluded to the issue of the leaders that we have. The requirement for someone to be elected or to seek the parliamentary position is a Form 4 certificate. I mean, talk to us about the standard of the leaders that we have here in the country and how it is affecting our progress as a country. Professor.
Hard questions. The first one is inflation. There are 2 key drivers of inflation. One is food, the other one is oil or fuel. And Kenya should be very lucky that it has been raining. The rains have been very good. So that will probably mute the inflation rate. But with the price of oil going up, you can be sure inflation is going to go up. That one, there's no question about it. And that is why people are very unhappy, because that is going to erode their purchasing power. The price of fuel, for example, diesel has gone up by about 40%. I don't think there's anybody whose salary or profit has gone up by 40%. And that's why the purchasing power has been eroded. People are unhappy. Selecting the people to lead the country, I think that has been my biggest worry. That when, and Choba put it very well, when you're looking for even a house girl, you are looking for a very good house girl. Even a person who trims your hedges, you want the best person. When it comes to electing leaders, our biggest problem is that we check for who has more money. We queue to be given money.
Okay.
So when Kenyans complain they get bad leaders, they should not complain. We get those bad leaders because instead of looking at my integrity and my character, you look at how much money I can give you. Yes. So unless Kenyan voters, citizens change, even in 2027 and beyond, we are going to get bad leaders. I have no question about that. I have no doubt about that. But if we follow Choba's argument, and we argue that we set standards and we follow, that for you to be a leader, you have the following characteristics, the following criteria, and we enforce that, that is going to work. The problem is that if you look at the law, the legal system, they have made sure that all the appeal systems are exhausted before you are stopped from becoming a leader. So we need, again, change in the legal system. But the people who are supposed to change the legal system would be the victims of that. So unless the voters wake up and demand accountability and integrity from future leaders, we are stuck there. And then I make one more point because I may not have a chance. If we want to solve the problems we are talking about now, we must do three things. One, we must work together. East African community, African Free Trade Area, let's work together. That's what will make us stop what Shoba is talking about, other people exploiting us. Number two, if we are going to exploit our resources, we must focus on science, technology, and research. Now everybody's talking about oil, but the next oil, we are not even discussing it now, the rare earth metals, because that's going to be the next oil. We have scientists, technologists, engineers to focus on that particular sector. And finally, all of us, we must think intergenerational, beyond ourselves. That's how we are going to solve the national problems.
Fair enough. To be fair, Mr. Kaunda, 30 seconds, your parting shot.
With all due respect, and I want to assure our members that no fare is going to increase. And in this regard, the fact that we announced the suspension of the strike for 7 days, that it does not mean that we are friends.
Okay,
fair enough. We are not friends until we reach an agreement. And the agreement is that fuel has to come down.
Okay, pretty much. Thank you. Mr. Shomba, 30 seconds, kindly.
My 30 seconds is that I need to say the following, that in a crisis like we are having in the country, the government has the responsibility. We understand the constraint. I will not sit here and say I don't appreciate the constrained physical space, but I've said this, and I want to say this again. We are suffering the way we are suffering because of the inefficiencies created in the system that we run. And I've said this, President Ruto, if you don't leave us with any legacy project in this country, and I said this also to President Uhuru last time, leave us with public institutional discipline, where people can get what they want the way it is designed, where people do what they ought to do, and nobody has to give a bribe or have to cut corners. If you leave us with that, all other systems will just flow and will create a lot of efficiencies in our systems.
Thank you, Dr. 30 seconds.
Thank you so much. One, you asked a question, Professor. Let me ask the question why
30 seconds,
the president is doing this, yet he is facing a direction. Two things. He wants everybody to be very desperate, completely desperate, poor, and everything else. Then you can buy people out. That is his thinking. And finally, we are willing to give everybody 1 week, that they said, on Wednesday next week. It will not be a transport industry thing. It will be a national movement of making sure prices are down. That's what we are going to do, all of us together, including Gen Zs, your industry, everybody else, the united opposition. We are going to see what's going to happen, because that's how it should be.
Thank you. Prof, 20 seconds, just to be fair to you.
This country is ours. We have had bigger challenges in the past. We went through COVID-19, went through other crises, including Mau Mau and so on, and we solved those problems. There's no problem in this country that is surmountable if we pull together and believe that the future can be better than today.
Well, pretty much. Thank you very much, Professor Eksaniraki. Thank you very much, Dr. Peter Mbai, Mr. Martin Chomba. Many thanks. And of course, Mr. Kennedy Kaunda, thank you very much for making time to be with us. Now, of course, to your viewer, many thanks for staying with us up to this particular moment in time. And in the words of Mr. Kennedy Kaunda, I'd say this because my phone is buzzing. With all due respect, Arsenal fans, kindly stay away from my DM. I know you've won the league, but please stay away from my DM until further notice. Many thanks. Do enjoy the rest of our programming. And if you're sleeping, good night to the team that made this possible. Many thanks. See you again next time. And like always, God bless.